This was definitely something to take seriously, as they do drop live ordnance. I thanked her for the advice and headed out. It was early morning, and I continued to enjoy the feeling of wind on my face and the liberating feeling of being able to break free of any social obligations. I reached the turnoff area where it was all dirt and gravel from there on. I performed a quick test on my ham radio to ensure it was working properly. I set the repeater offset and verified the reception was clear. The dial tone registered, and I got a familiar weather forecast for the day. I was ready to begin. I headed down the dirt trail and soldiered on through the bumps and washes. My bike frantically kicked up dust and rocks until I finally reached a couple of fork points in the trail. At this point, I couldn't quite remember which direction I was supposed to go, as I had only been in the area once before with a friend, and he drove. I looked at my map and got what I believed to be a good bearing and headed off down the trail. Now, when I say trail, these are more like gravel roads that sometimes end or bring you to a military base encampment or some of the other small encampments around the state, wildlife preserves, or even BLM land and campsites. Accidentally venturing into a military one isn't a huge deal. They'll usually just turn you around or wave you off. So I wasn't too horribly concerned about a run-in with anything unless you're up near Groom Lake, but that's a different beast. After driving down this particular trail for a while, I realized I'm lost. None of the landscape looked familiar, and I had traveled a good 25 miles before reaching anything that looked like a decent campsite. I had packed plenty of water and food, so I wasn't concerned about finding a spring or anything edible. I had also remembered the way in which I came, so that wasn't really an issue either. At this point, I just decided it was adventure time and drove on for a while until I found a campsite I deemed suitable for a short stay. I ended up settling at the base of a mountain near a dried-up wash. It was a pretty nice area, and there were quite a few Joshua trees and trenches to set up in for some decent afternoon shade. It wasn't the rainy season at this point, so the threat of a flash flood taking me out wasn't really a concern either. After getting set up, I threw on my camel pack, grabbed my rifle, and filled my flask with a bit of vodka just for fun. I was my own man now and had to answer to no one. I walked around a bit, heard the familiar sounds of cicadas, and headed towards another dry wash bed near the base of the mountain. After walking for a bit, I quickly became bored and took a swig of vodka. Sometimes it can take a bit to just detach from normal life and relax. I decided after my drink it was time to start setting up targets and push my Yugo M76 to its limits. After setting up a few targets, I was good to go. I walked back to my campsite, identifying local plant life and inspecting oddly shaped rocks. Not really in any hurry, I stirred up a jackrabbit on the way back who was less than happy to see my presence in the valley. I shouldered my rifle to take a pot shot at it, and then I noticed something in the corner of the scope. I adjusted the zoom and got a closer look. It was a freshly killed coyote. I decided to let our little rabbit friend go and headed towards the coyote carcass. The closer I got, the more pungent the air became. The smell of rotting meat was heavy. When I got closer to it, two things struck me as slightly odd. Number one, the pelt wasn't completely removed, but what had been removed was fairly clean, and there weren't any missing extremities. Coyotes are considered a nuisance, so you can shoot them freely, but usually grabbing the pelt, tail, or paw is common. Number two, it didn't look like there had been any entry or exit wounds from a bullet. Being a bit confused, I just wrote it off as a sloppy hunter who had found a coyote dead of natural causes and was scamming some farmer offering bounties on hides. Sometimes, cannibalism happens in coyote packs, but it's not very common. I made it back to camp, started myself a fire, drank down a shot or two more of liquid courage, and settled on taking pot shots at the targets I set up. I tinkered around, adjusted my scope, and tried taking the longest shots I could. I made a few accurate shots out to 700 meters and decided I had pushed my rifle as far as I could in my slightly buzzed state. Yes, I know guns plus alcohol equals bad, but I wasn't exactly in a crowded area either, nor completely shit-faced. After letting the rifle cool down for a bit and breaking open one of my MREs, I began cleaning it.